Hey everyone, welcome to this week's session. So this is week 3. Our session is prototyping. Today we're going to be learning all about how to turn your idea and build it into a proof of concept. And we're very excited to be welcoming Am Sagarwala, who is the Digital Experience Manager at the Future Skills Center at Ryerson. He's actually worked with the Legal Innovation Zone on several projects and programs over the past several years. And has worked with different startups, different students, different concepts that we've been working on. So we're very excited to have him share his years of knowledge with our folks today. Just before I transfer it off, I did want to do some quick housekeeping to go over kind of what we're doing today and what's expected over the next little bit. Obviously we're capturing the prototyping session today. After Am has completed his segment, we're actually going to be inviting Mona Dat. She is the founder and CEO of Loom Analytics, so they're a Liz alumni company, and she's going to be sharing her perspective on prototyping and kind of going through the development process.
Okay, so I'm just going to be doing a minute to set up here. I'm going to be switching several times, and the reason for that is I have some slides that I'm going to be referring to, and then I'll be switching to sort of an over-the-shoulder demo where I'll be doing some work on the phone and showing you how you can quickly, rapidly create a prototype that you can show to people, and then we'll be moving onto the computer screen in order to show you how to make a higher fidelity prototype. The goal of this, although we are going to be focusing primarily on mobile design, the goal of this is to give you an idea of how you can take an idea, burst it out, you could say, and then transition to something visual and then move into something of higher fidelity while getting feedback through each iteration. Feedback is probably the most important aspect of what I'll be talking to you about today. And the reason for that is it helps you guide your prototype. The analogy I like to use here is if you are sailing or flying or even driving, you're going to do sort of an overarching mapping of where you're going from point A to point B. And then you'll be making sort of micro adjustments in order to make sure you're on the right course. And sometimes you need to do bigger adjustments. So let's just say you're driving, you hit some traffic, you need to divert. We do that with our designs too. You may have an idea of what you'd like to create, but you may find that you'll have to switch things up in order to meet the needs of your users because you may have had some oversight in terms of what you're trying to create. Okay, so I'm going to just pull up my slides. Share screen. Here. Okay, so hopefully you can see that. Okay, so Nafis already introduced me. I feel like I've been doing sessions with the Legal Innovation Zone for over 6 years. I might be wrong here, but it feels like it's been about 6, maybe more sessions. I've done a few changes to my slides. In fact, I just redesigned the slides for this presentation because it was a webinar. And also because I didn't want to focus so much on justifying why we do what we do. Instead, I wanted to be very practical in this presentation, showing you how we do what we do, and then kind of letting it express itself as to why it's important to follow this process. I'm primarily a web designer, again to web development, but over the years, because I've been creating so many websites, I started to question why we do things the way we do it. And that basically gets you into what's known as user experience design. And so that's kind of what we're focusing on today with a bit of design. Not so much development. You don't need to code today. The goal of what we're doing is so that you can visually express your idea and possibly give it to a developer or a designer to take it to the next level. So you don't have to be a designer to get through this to this session. Okay, so we're going to define some requirements. We're going to go through a process where we put things on paper and then try to take those ideas and transition them to something visual. I'm going to talk about the visual components, and these are just basic building blocks that you can repurpose for any design. They're very agnostic in that I can use it for a mobile device, I can use it for a print ad, I can use it for a website. So if you're creating an app or if you're creating a website, this will be very relevant to you. I'll allude to what you could do in terms of a decision tree. So if you're doing a chat bot or some sort of messaging interface, I'll hit on that, but I won't go very in depth in it because of time. Lean methodology is something I'll be covering throughout the session. The goal of it is to put the least amount of effort in to get something that you can test. And so if we can put something out there and test it quickly, then what the result will be is you can get feedback and quickly iterate. So rather than kind of designing in solo or like going to an island and creating and then coming out of that environment and start showing something after a year of like work, what we try to do here is take your idea and show it off to people immediately and try to get validation. If people are enticed by what you're trying to offer, then you go to the next step. So we'll start with putting some things on paper, right? So we'll write some ideas out and then we'll quickly mock it up as a wireframe. And I have a few here. And then we'll go to the next step, which is actually designing on screen. And the goal of this session overall will be to create an interactive prototype. There will be no data drive to this, so it's not data driven, but you will be at least able to show it off and give people an idea of what you're trying to express. Okay, so planning the design. Probably the most important part of what we're going to be doing today, it's not the actual execution of the design, but it's expanding upon your offering. Naf has shared a listing of all the projects that you're working on, and looking at that, I kind of came up with a way of remixing aspects of all of those projects and making an offering that is also relevant to the legal industry. So the decision was to create a small claims app. And the idea is you serve someone with a request for funds. The app will have you collect all the information to support that claim, and then you serve the person at the end. We're not going to go through all of the aspects of the app, but I will cover some of the main components, and then you can always fill in the blanks with what we do next. I'll also try to refer to some of the offerings that have been given to me in terms of the projects that you're working on. And if you have any questions throughout the sessions, or if you wanted to ask how you could implement a specific thing, feel free to put that in the chat, and I'll get back to it sort of at the end of the 3 pieces of today's session. So the first piece is just planning. The second piece will be mock-ups, and the third piece is creating an interactive prototype. Okay. So the first thing to do when you're coming up with an offering is try to frame it using about 3 adjectives. The goal here is to use those adjectives to come up with analogies that you can use to design the rest of your app. And I find this very effective because of its story-making background. When people storytell, it really gets people engaged and they want to hear how the story plays out. So if you use some of those approaches to telling a story and delivering your service, it helps you really come up with a cohesive offering. So think about it this way. If I get to a spot in your app where something might not load because you're disconnected from the internet, for example, you could say, oh, sorry, you appear to be offline, and that's it. But something more engaging could be done. And so if I'm going to say the 3 adjectives for my app are calm, clear, and supportive, I might say, sorry to hear something has gone wrong. It appears you're not connected to the internet. Try clicking here to test your connection. So what you're doing is you're supporting them, you're keeping them calm, and you're being very clear about what might have gone wrong. The exact opposite of this would be 404 error, which you might have seen on websites when a page doesn't load. And it doesn't tell people much, but if our goal is to be calm, clear, and supportive, we would use language and visuals to express those three adjectives that describe our company or offering. Linking to that is like your color scheme and how you use iconography or text to guide people through your app. And I'll have lots of examples of this as we start building our small claims app. So a great way to come up with a color scheme and visual support for what you're doing is a Google image search. So in this case, I've just gone to Google Images, so images.google.com, and I've put in Calm Clear Supportive App. And you can see calm.com, which has an app for meditation, shows up first. But there's a few other offerings that show up that we can also look at. The primary color in use is a blue color scheme with some purple or yellow accents. There's even some turquoise. But we can use that. We can also remix it. So we've done some research, and now what we're going to do is take the visual approaches that are in line with our adjectives and then use it for the next step. So research, look up your adjectives, see what sorts of visuals come up, and then don't copy, but remix. So create like a visual board of what you're trying to go for, and then look for pieces from each one of those ideas that you like, and then try to put them together and reach your audience. So by reach, I mean test it. Get feedback on what your approach is and see if people agree with it or feel that you're missing the mark. And of course, you want people that are willing to offer your feedback and not worry about hurting your feelings. So strangers are really good at this. The problem with just approaching strangers is they may not have an understanding of what you're trying to do. So in some cases, if you're networking, if you're at an event, if you're at a mixer of sorts, pull out your app and ask people what they think, or just tell them about your idea and the adjectives or the visuals that you have found and see what they think about that. Okay, so to play off the point of calm, clear, and supportive, I was thinking about what companies represent what I'm doing. And I tried to go with 3 different areas, and UNHCR, which is the Human Rights Commission, if I'm not mistaken. They do charity support for people coming out of refugees, basically. I want to make sure that my screen is shared here. Give me a second. Okay, so share. Okay, so you can see once again, UNHCR has that blue color scheme in play. And as we scroll down, they have a very strong grid layout. And what I mean by that is over here, we have 3 columns. And then further down, it's still a 3-column layout, but in this case, it's 50% for an image and then 25% for 2 columns. So we can use that sort of as a layout. If I was going to create a website, I could consider using or reusing their grid and maybe parts of their color scheme. They also have a yellow accent in play. I could play with that, but it's really up to you from a branding standpoint what you'd like to do. Going back to the slides. I also went for a cleaning service. So another example of what you could sort of use for color screen and layout. Color scheme, I should say. Once again, blue, you can see this almost in every site. Yellow accents again, same thing, sort of a 3-column layout. And then the final example that I've brought is calm.com, which is a meditation app. Blue color scheme. And if we drill down, we'll see some of their accents. In this case, it's fairly, yeah, so they also have a green accent in use. Also, you'll notice that with their particular offering, the amount of options being presented are minimal. We have a single option form. They're not showing like 8 different things that we have to fill out to get started with an account. But if I were to choose one of these options and click through, it'll then ask you for the next piece. So rather than presenting a form with 7 options or 8 options, they'll just go step by step and really walk you through the process. So we might want to recreate that in our app. The other thing I've done is I've just done an image search for each one of these terms. Nafis will be sharing the slides with you after the session. You can also come back to the recording and see. But I'm not going to click through. That's just for you if you ever wanted to see how adjectives can help you find visual support for what you're doing. Okay, so interaction maps are a good way to map out the user flow or the journey that a user will go through in order to get from their first impression of your app or website or whatever your offering is, all the way to funnel them through to the end result. So in this case, the app that I'm presenting, which is the Small Claims app, it will have almost like a linear approach. There's not many forks that will occur. And to keep things really simple, we start with an about page. And then we have a sign up, which sends them to a login if they already have an account, and then they can view their account. So in this case, there is a way you can split off and do other things. But generally speaking, you will create a claim. So there'll be a form to support that step. And then there'll be the providing of evidence in order to substantiate the claim. And then you have to serve them. So there'll be sort of like a deployment. And then the results after some time as it goes through some sort of mitigation, and then the payout. So I'm not from a legal background, so this may not be the best approach. So the best thing for me to do is to approach someone with a law background and ask them if this process makes sense. And the more people you ask, of course, the more feedback you'll get, and also the more guidance. And so for me to actually do this for real, I would need to make sure that the flow of what we're doing it makes sense and it can be implemented from a legal standpoint. Okay, so just looking at sort of the steps here, we can take each one of these items and break it out into a page. So it could be a page in an app, it could be a web page. And then we also have to think of what are the steps for each one of these items that need to be implemented in order for the app to function. So for the create claim process, there will likely have to be a form with a listing of the types of claims that the app supports. So let's just say it's because of property damage. So we could have an option for property damage. The user will click on it, and then it'll take them to the evidence collection form. So uploading images, a description of what happened, dates, times, etc. And then go to the next step from there. So the providing of evidence may have several steps within it. And the serving, if we need to put in contact information, maybe someone that is supporting this claim also, that also might be part of the evidence or the serving stage of this application. Okay, so that's from a planning process. That's really all I wanted to start with for today. There's many other steps we can do here. And later on, I'll go through collecting image assets and a color scheme and sort of branding out your application. But I think for what we're going to be doing today, just coming up with a few steps that you'd like to iterate, and you can follow along while doing this. So if you have a moment, if you have a piece of paper with you and a pen, what you can do is write out some of the items that you'd like to do for your particular app. And then I'll be walking you through what happens next. Okay, so we're going to get into what's known as wireframing. You can think of this as a very low fidelity representation of your application. I personally like using wireframes because they take a few seconds to create, and you can either show them in a very analog, physical way, or you can also go to the next step, which is taking a mobile device and taking pictures of the mockups that you've created, the wireframes that you've created, and make it interactive, which I'll be showing you today. So this is an example of a few wireframes for a website. You can see over here that they've used a 4-column layout for the frontmost wireframe on the left. And then on the right, they have a 2-column layout. They have some interface hints. So if you look at the wireframe to the right-hand side, they have a slider with arrows so you can switch between the images. They have some placeholder text. They have a form, a banner across the bottom, and then their footer showing. So rather than drawing out an image, keep it very simple and just draw a box with an X. And that just denotes an image will be put there. You don't have to think through all the details at this point, which is another reason why doing it this way is very fast. What I like to do is not even write out text aside from headings. So if there's a login screen, what I'll do is I'll just write login, put a box for a logo, and then I'll just draw some form interface boxes and a submit button. And instead of writing submit, I'll just put a wavy line, which you'll see up close once I switch views. So choose 1 or 2 of the steps. For today, I'm going to be showing you a login screen and the submit claim form. And then from there, we can just create a few other interfaces depending on how we're doing for time. We want to limit the number of features. I don't like to do more than 3 features on one screen. The most effective thing is to create a component for each one of the features. And when I say feature, it could be a drop-down box that will take you to the next step. And that's all I'll prototype on that one card or step. I might show like a bulleted list, and then the user could click through that list and go into further details. But an example, which you'll see soon, is just make a login form, and that's all you're going to have on that one step. So try to keep it as simple as possible. I'm sure many of you have heard of scope creep. So stay away from that. Just stick to 1 or 2 things. And if you want to add something else, just make a separate card for it. So just in terms of my workflow, I like to use cue cards. The really cool thing about cue cards is the aspect ratio. So the width to height ratio. It's very similar to a mobile device, right? So very effective. When you start taking pictures of these and putting it onto a mobile device, you can basically fill your screen with the back of it. So one side has lines, one side doesn't on a standard cue card. And so that helps me either have a grid or even to put some notes as to what I'm trying to achieve. And then on the other side, I'll draw or mock up what I want to visually represent. The other good thing about these cue cards is if I am working landscape, I can create several columns on a website, for example. So I can use horizontal cards for a sidebar and horizontal cards for the main content and a vertical card for the sidebar. And then you can move them around and kind of create that way. Depending on how much fidelity you want, so how much detail you want, you can use several cards side by side, right? So I could have cards side by side and mock up several columns on a website. So they're very flexible that way. And if you are mocking up a website, you can kind of lay it all out on a table and then move things around. So once again, sticking to 1 feature per card is very important, because then I could say we want introductory text at the top, and then I'll move an image below that, but maybe we don't like that, so we'll switch it around. So an image on 1 card makes it very flexible, and you can kind of map out your website more effectively. If you're doing a chat-based app, you can do questions and responses. So if I was doing sort of a decision tree or branching out, what I could do is have each step as a layer on the card. So it'll be like, welcome to our site, how can we help you? And then you can show like how the user could respond. And if they can have multiple responses, I could just have those all on 1 line. And then the next step, right, you can put it beneath that card. So it shows how your chat can transition. If there's multiple directions or a decision tree, what you can do is take multiple cards and just lay it out like that, showing that there's 2 ways that the user could respond. And then our response to that could go multiple ways. If you're trying to get too complex and you can't show all the decisions or ways of mapping out a chat, once again, keep it simple. Try to decide what are the top 2, maybe 3 choices that could occur. So you'll notice that call centers do this really effectively. If you call into like one of the big telecom companies in any region in the world, they'll usually say, are you talking about billing? Are you looking to set up a new plan? So you go to sales, right? So they usually have only a few options available. And so the decision tree that has to be made is very simple. And you also don't fatigue the user with an overwhelming amount of options. So try to use cue cards. They're super cheap, order it online. I think for a few dollars, I got 500 cards. So it's more than enough for what I've been doing. So consider it. Otherwise, you can just take a piece of paper, fold it, cut it, and make your own cue cards. Okay, so I've talked about making your steps very bite-sized. We're going to choose 2 or 3 steps for today's wireframes. And I already spoke about sort of the benefits of wireframes, so I'll just skip through this. And we're gonna actually get into a process now. So I'm gonna stop sharing the screen, and I'm gonna go to an overhead view, and then I'm gonna show you how to level up these cue cards and make something really interactive and rich. Okay, so we're gonna stop sharing the screen. All right, let's switch cameras. All right, so here's the overhead view. Before I get started, are there any questions? You can either type it out or you can hit unmute on your camera. I see one question from Matt. So he's talking about a feature. And it's great that I now am in the overhead camera view because I can actually show you a single feature of the app would be a login screen. And what I've done here is I've focused on the actual login area. And then down here, we could have like a sign up option. So new to the small claims app, sign up today, and the sign up today could be a button. And so if someone clicks there, they're going to be presented with a sign up form or a login with Google or something like that. But if they click here and they fill out their login credentials, they click submit, then they'll go to the next stage. So this particular wireframe has 2 options on it. So we're really just focusing on 2 features. Another example of a feature for this app, you can think of a feature sort of as like a supporting step in getting people to their end goal with your app. So in this case, it's a support or a submit claim form. And all we're doing here is putting some introductory text, right? So it's like what we're going to be doing first. I could like walk the people through the process or explain to them how our website works. Don't want to get into that in detail right now, but I'm going to have some sort of explainer text. And then down here, is there a question coming in? Okay, it looks like someone unmuted their mic, but we might just have to mute them. They're not ready to ask a question. Okay, so then we're going to get into sort of this drop down here, which is your claim type. And I've made it in such a way that you can kind of type in and it'll autocomplete or suggest claims. And then over here we have common claims, right? So some standard claims that are used by people that use this app. So a common claim could be property damage, or you might say failure to pay for goods, right? If you're working in a business. And I could have several categories, which is why I kind of broke up the bullet points. So we could say residential claims, business claims, something like that. And then the top 3 common claims for each one. So in this case, the feature is just this area here, which is choosing your claim type. And I'm trying to mock up the entire user flow for just starting to submit a claim. The other thing I've done while mocking up today is just shown what happens when you start writing damage, and then it'll say property damage, and damage is kind of emphasized over here. So it's showing you a list of all the things relating to damage because the user started typing in. And as you can see, like It's fine to make mistakes. We're just getting to a point where we're just trying to express our ideas. Don't over-censor yourself. Just get the idea on paper. Okay. The great thing about this is if you make a mistake, try to redesign the entire thing. Maybe there's a better way of doing the same page, right? So if I just started off with a common claims list and no search option, I would have made another card that gets us to this point where they can start filling out, where they can type, and then it'll give them a short list based on that. Okay. And then I've also gone ahead and created like this is the submit claim option. And I mentioned earlier that com.com only presents one option at a time. And so if I'm trying to be supportive and calming as an app, I've overwhelmed the user. So this is actually a bad approach. So what I can do is grab a cue card from my stack. Out of curiosity for the people tuning in, are you able to see the details on the cards, or is it a bit blown out for you? Is it sharp, or should I be angling the card a bit more?
That looks the best right there.
Brilliant. Thanks, Matt. I assume that was Matt.
Jason.
Oh, Jason. Thanks, Jason. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take this interface that I've created for, there we go, for creating the claim. And what I was trying to do here is kind of show that there's a section menu so you can jump between areas of the form, but the actual form itself is a bit overwhelming. So what we might want to do is start with our common banner across the top. I like to use what's known as a hamburger menu, which is the 3 lines at the top. I don't know if it's, yeah, so we have the 3 lines at the top that just indicates there's a menu. I'll draw a box with an X on it to indicate that there's our logo there. Let me zoom in a bit. Okay, so I've drawn a box just to show that, yeah, that there's a logo there, and then we might just have some text to say you're creating a claim for something. So this could say, let's stick to property damage, property DMG. We know what that is. Okay, and now what I'll do is we'll just say there's an upload box for images, and the common way of showing an image is kind of the mountain with the sun in the background, right? And then we can have a button here that just says upload, and maybe we'll have like an arrow to show that there's an upload option there. And then I'll have some support text beneath that, right? So we're just presenting one step over here, which is to upload your images. I'll have some explainer text, and then we might need a next button to go to the next stage. And then I'll have some support text here. If you tend to forget what you're doing in the moment, this is where the back of the card comes in. So I can just write out the details of what we're trying to achieve. Nafis, out of curiosity, do you have a white page? I think what's happening is the camera is seeing the black background and blowing out the colors. Okay, so you know, just to give me some guidance, because I'm drawing things out on this card, I could use the back to sort of describe what some of the components are. And you can also just go in and, you know, use your own sort of reference system. So I could write numbers. I could just say 1, 2, 3, 4. So I've just numbered each of the elements on the page. So on the back of the card, I could say number 1, this is a drag and drop image uploader with a button. So if someone wants to, like, rather than drag and drop, they can click here for accessibility and find the image on their desktop. Number 2 is explainer text. Number 3 is you can come back to the step later, right? Just to keep it forgiving. So if they don't have images, they're like, oh, I haven't taken images yet, and then they have to stop their application, you can just reassure them, and then you can go next, right? So a few steps that you can take just to keep the clarity of what you're trying to achieve. And what I like to do is just start with 2 of these interfaces for the main features of your app. So in my case, it's the submit claim card or page. and it's the collecting of evidence page. So these are sort of the two main features of my app. Rather than continuing to create many, many more cards, what we can do, here, let's see if this background helps. Yeah, I can already see the contrast is improved. So thanks, Nafis. Okay, so we have these two steps. Let me zoom out a bit now. This will help. We have these two steps that we're going to really be focusing on. Maybe a bit tighter. Yeah, there we go. We have a login screen, and we have another step in our submit claim. So 1, 2, 3, 4. This I feel is an overwhelming interface, so we'll just get rid of it. And now what I'm going to do is show you one of my favorite things to get started with prototyping. There's an application called Prototyping on Paper. So in the App Store, if you just search POP, Prototyping on Paper, or POP, right? It's a short form for it. You'll get this app by a company called Marvel. And they make a desktop offering that allows you to really get into a higher fidelity mockup, which I will be showing you later. But this particular app makes it really easy. You don't even have to sign in. So if we're thinking about the user flow, you may want to set your sign in later until they're ready to serve a claim. So you basically collect all this information, and then they're enticed to sign up because they don't want to lose their spot. So a really easy way to onboard users. Okay, so I'm not going to sign in. Instead, I'm just going to click this button or tap this button for creating a project. I'm presented with options for the type of phone that I'd like to use. I'm going to name my app Claims. I selected an iPhone 6, but you can see that there are a few other interfaces available, including a watch. But I like the iPhone 6. The resolution is not too high. If I went for the iPhone X, I'd have to make bigger interfaces. So let's just say done. And now we have to add our designs. And the great thing about this is we can just use the camera to capture our designs right on the phone. So I'm going to hover over my login screen, which is over here. Let me move this out of the way. I'll just go in order. So starting with the login screen, we kind of hold it in place, and I'll hit the camera button. Okay, so we've gotten a snap of that. I'll do the next step, which is the submit claim step, where we search for the type of claim that we want to find. Do the same thing. So I've got a snap of that. We'll move to the next two steps that we've here. So I'll take a snap of that. And finally, the evidence collection step. So now that I've got my 4 captures, I'm going to hit the check mark. And it asks you to crop. One of the less intuitive things about doing this step is you have to kind of zoom in using a pinch or pull gesture. And then you can hit the scissor icon to crop it at that size. And it'll just go through each of your pages. You kind of want to align it. Just as a tip, when you're taking pictures, if you have enough contrast between the card and the background, it makes it a lot easier. So I can kind of see the edges of my cue cards. That makes it easier. And finally, the property damage one. Okay, so now we have our 4 interfaces brought into the app. I'm going to tap on the first interface, and you can see it says tap add link to your design. So I'm going to hit add link. We kind of position it. So I'm going to position it over the login button, and it's fine if it's bigger. It's actually better if you go a little bigger, because if you've drawn your buttons too small, if you have fat fingers, it gets hard to test. So I always like to just make it bigger, and these buttons become invisible. So I've positioned this box where I'd like it to be created. What I can do next is link to image. So from the login screen, if someone hits submit, we'll assume they put in the right credentials. I can tap on the second screen, which is our submit claim stage. I'm going to make it push left, meaning it'll slide in like so. So it'll slide in from the right-hand side, left, and we'll say done. The next thing you can do is swipe, go to the next scene, which is the submit claim, and I'll do the same thing. I'll just say add link, and I'll drag the box so it covers the entire claim dropdown. We'll link the image to the next card. In this case, I don't want it to transition. It's technically the same page, so I like to use a fade transition for that step. We'll say done. And I'll add one more link because the next step, which is, there we go. The next step is submitting evidence. So if you were to choose a claim, you want to end up at the evidence collection page, and I'll push that left also. Done. And over here, I just want to make sure that the fade's in. So it should be transitioning to the next one, and I want it to fade, so I'll hit done. Then I'll go to the next one. So it's very much like step and repeat. So I'm gonna go to property damage, and then we're gonna go to evidence collection. We're gonna push that left. And then just one more item that I can do is, let's just say they click the hamburger menu, the three bars at the top left-hand side of my screen. What I can do here is transition back to the login. And for fun, I'll make that flip transition. If I were to tap, let's just say this drop-down button, so the top, what I'd like it to do is transition back. So close the drop-down, but stay on the original page, and that'll be a fade. Okay, so I've created quite a few interactions. I'll show you how the interactions now play out when you're actually testing the app. The great part about this is you can just pull out your phone and show your app to someone that you're talking to. So I'll hit done, and we'll hit the play button here. Okay, so here we are at our login screen. If you're not sure where to tap, just tap anywhere on screen, and it'll show you the hit area. So I can log in. It's swiped. It came to our submit claim area. I'll tap the drop down. I'll hit property damage, right? And we can go back. Now, I didn't actually add a link to this section, but what we can do to exit is just tap and hold. We can exit, and then I can go to that card and add a link. So let's just say if we hit the text to go back, we can do that, and I'll add a link. No, not to there. We'll go back to the submit claim. And in this case, it'll push right. So it'll look like we're going back in time almost. And then I'll also add just one more link up here, and that'll get us once again to the login page with a flip transition. We'll say done. We'll play it again. So I'm logging in. I'm looking at a claim. I like the property damage one. I want to go back. Right, so it did it. I want to go back. And then I want to log out. So I'll just, oh, I didn't do a gesture there, but if I go here, I have a feeling, yeah. So now I can log out. You saw the flip transition. So really easy. We spent a little less than 15 minutes creating this. We've mocked out things just with pen and paper, and we've gotten to a point where we have something to show, even though the fidelity might not be there. But if you're ever speaking to a developer or someone to help you with sort of design, this speaks volumes. They can just take this, and you'll be saving a lot of money because they won't be spending as much time making decisions on the user interface and transitions and whatnot. This works also well for chat. I could just keep tapping on 3 options. So if you have the ABC, you could just choose one of those responses, and you can show how the chat plays out. Okay. So the next part of the presentation will be on screen. So let me just transition back to the slides. Okay, and we're gonna just switch cameras up here. There we go. Yeah, okay. There we go. I'm back. Okay, so I showed you how to just do those wireframes. Hopefully it's very intuitive and you won't have much difficulty creating that. I already leveled up because I took these images and I converted it into something functional and interactive. And now what we're going to do is take these low fidelity mockups that we did with hand on paper, and we're going to use the Marvel app in order to create it. The color palette that you see on my slides is from a website called colorlovers.com. Really nice if you want to quickly come up with a color scheme based on the adjectives that we came up in the first part of today's presentation. And then what we're going to do is go to one of these websites. You can grab an icon and use that for your logo until something better can be designed. So when these slides go out, you can use the resources below. We can grab images from any of these websites. The app that I'll be showing you in a second allows you to grab images from Unsplash, which has royalty-free images free for you to use, and the quality of them is quite good. I'm very impressed with images when I'm in a crunch and I don't have time to purchase something from a stock photo site. Another thing that you can use to really get yourself moving with designing without making those hard decisions on how to design effectively, you can use material design by Google. There's a site called UI Patterns that has a big collection of user interface styles that you can follow. And then style guides will also walk you through using a series of interfaces. So rather than building from scratch, you can remix these patterns and really move into something that looks great. So for today, I'm going to be showing you Marvel, which is one of the resources at the bottom. There's dozens more of these websites that allow you to create interfaces. Another good option is Adobe XD, which is free. The problem with Adobe XD is to bring in assets and create assets, you still need Adobe software, which you would have to purchase. Okay, so the interactive prototype, I'm going to jump over to marvelapp.com, and I'll show you how to do some interactive prototyping quickly. I've taken the interfaces that I hand drew earlier, and I transitioned them, some of them, into this app. Because of time, I'll just show you sort of how the app works, and then we'll move to a question and answer session. So we're going back to Chrome. Okay, so I have Marvel open here. I'm already logged in. It's free to set up an account and have one project hosted. What I've done is I've created a welcome screen. I have a sign-in screen over here, and then a sign-up screen. So this first screen will link to both of these sign-in and sign-up screens. So if I were to, let's just create a new design quickly. So what I'm going to do, sorry, the video is in the way. Okay, so I'm going to click here on Add Images. And I'm going to design in Marvel. You also have the option of uploading from a computer. So if you created images in a different app or a different piece of software, what you can do is upload them. But Marvel has interface components that you can just drag and drop onto a canvas. So I'm just going to zoom in a bit and scroll to the top. If I click up here, I can name this frame or screen. So we'll just call it submit frame. I can change the background color. There's a few other options here. What I like to do to make it really look like this is a phone's UI is I like the top bar. So I think if I search for carrier, well, let's just scroll down. I can't remember the name of it. Yeah, so the status bar, that's what I was looking for. So if I hit add status bar, you can see it adds that interface component. And then what I'll do is I'll add, as I'm scrolling through, there's buttons, there's keyboards, a search bar. So probably a search bar is what I want for this app. So there it is. So you can search, and then I'll have maybe a table view so we can display some of the, oh, where'd it go? Yeah, display some of the options. So I'm just gonna, as you can see, it kind of laid out on top. But each one of these interfaces, when you drag them out, and there's a lot of information, if you double click, you can get into some of the items within that interface and just kind of delete them. So I don't need, I already have a search bar. I just wanted these items here. and then I'll move it backwards. So you can imagine this is like a listing of claims that we can do. We have a search to sort of filter this down so it's not such a large list. Just going to move that up to tighten it up. And I'd probably want like the title of the page. There's also a navigation bar, which could be nice to make this look a bit polished. But over here, I can say, just got to double click to drill down. So I'll just say submit claim here. And then I think I'll just move these items. So what I'm doing is I'm shift clicking to select a few items, a few components. Oh, I moved too fast. Okay, so that looks pretty tight. I wanted some explainer text. For now, I'm just going to leave that out. And I'm going to close this. So now I have 4 different views that have been created. You can see this one loading up right now. There we go. And now what we do, once we've added our designs, we would hover over any of these designs, and there's an option to prototype. So I'll click the option to prototype. It's going to render the image that I selected. And you can see I've already gone ahead and added some components here. I can quickly delete a component. But you can see that the icon, when I hover over it, says click and draw a hotspot. So I'll just click and drag and let go. And now it gives me options of where we'd like to go. So I've selected sign in, so I'll click the sign in page. And then if I click on the screen transition tab, I can push it left, very similar to the app. And then it's a click or tap right now, but you can also customize how that happens. So swipes are kind of nice if you really want to make it feel like a native mobile app. It's funny because a few years ago, I was showing off one of these mock-ups that I did on my device. And the person was like, oh, I want to get this app right now. Is it available in the App Store? And I was like, no, this is just a mock-up. It's not even a real app. So when you're using something like this, you can really get it to the point where you trick people into thinking, you don't want to trick them, but they might assume that the application is already available because the design is so polished by using existing components. So I would say if you're going to show off your app to people that might be in industry and you want to maybe ask about investment and that sort of thing, this is a really good way to show proof of concept and engage them. So if I hit play, you can see the mock-up here. And if you link your phone's account, you can actually push this design onto the phone and then actually test it on your device. So I'm going to click sign in. You can see the transition there. I forgot my password, so it'll go back a screen. If I click here, it'll go to the sign up. Right, so very easy, very fast. They have a lot of components that look like a designer. You know, it makes you look like a designer, in fact, because you're not making decisions on how each box looks. But you still have options of customizing colors and whatnot. So when I showed you that Color Lovers listing of colors, I double-clicked on this button and I changed the color so it matched the brand that I was going for. If you bring in an icon, you could have dragged it in and just branded the app so it shows that, you know, an actual company is behind this app. So consider doing that too. I know we're getting close to the end of the session now. So what I'd like to do is use the next 5 to 10 minutes, I guess, for any questions that you might have. Okay, you can see that the team's been sharing links to some of the resources that I've mentioned. So it's available in the Windows Store. It's also on Android. Marvel App's really good at supporting as many platforms as possible, including desktop. So if you wanted to mock up a web page, you could also use Marvel App for that. So I think we have about 4 minutes. Is that okay? So in the next 4 minutes, if anyone has any questions, feel free to just unmute your mic and speak, or you can just type it into the chat section of the website of the Zoom presentation. We have a platform, not a phone app. Should I do the same? I would say mocking up, if you have to express something visually, yes. Fernanda, which am I allowed to ask which project are you on?
Hi.
Hi.
Sorry. I have a platform, and my platform is online. It's all online, and
Okay.
we have the MVP running yet.
Okay,
So
you
I
already
don't
have
know.
something to show from the sound of
Yeah,
it.
I have something to show, so I don't know if I have to do this.
Well, you're at an MVP stage. I'm sure there's going to be many iterations on either components of your offering or possibly redesigns for larger aspects of what you have. So doing a prototyping process will help you to make decisions on what comes next. So for example, if you are going to be rolling out a new feature, rather than spending so much time on the development side, which is time consuming, you can kind of remove some of the decision making by just testing some of these interface aspects in terms of the user flow, and then you can go to the development stage next. That's usually how I use this. If I had more time, I was going to show you an entire website that I prototyped and how we laid it out, and we're still working on this website. It's been released in November, but we're now going to be doing an iteration on some of the projects and like a database and whatnot. So even just like showing the layout and some of the filtering options and such, this is very effective in getting the whole team on board. It also removes some of the problems that occur when a developer has to make assumptions on what you need. So this really adds clarity to the whole mix.
Yeah, but the problem is you know how to drive. I don't. I have a developer, I have a designer, I have a team.
Yeah. But let's just say you have an idea and you want to get your developer and designer on board, like on the same level. Just mock it up. You can see this. There's nothing much to this. This is not like, I'm not an illustrator either. I'm more of a coder, in fact. So when I do stuff like this and I have to get the team on board, it's just like an aha moment. Like they just get it. Like I'll lay this out on a table saying, okay, we need a database. I want an image. I want like the results to show up here. And then, you know, like they'll make it happen. And I find that the process is shortened. Like we get through more tasks faster, and there's less iteration. So like if a developer were to show me this, and I would just like do some notes on it and then give it back to them, then they would go ahead and just architect exactly what I need. The designer would skin it, and the developer would think of all the sort of the functions to run on this page, right? So I know that you're well on your way from the sound of it, but I think this will be more of one of those productivity hacks that you might want to incorporate in your process moving forward.
Yeah, thank you.
So the next question is there a benefit to starting the drafting with handwritten cue cards as opposed to drawing tables in Word? I find that removing software from the equation, if I'm on the train, if I'm at a restaurant, I've literally done these on napkins. And you know, if I have to express like, oh, I'm thinking about doing this, I'll just draw it up on a napkin. And then I can even take my phone and take a picture of it and make something interactive. I find that very effective. I mean, at the end of the day, this is just a tool. And so you should use the tool that you feel most comfortable with, that might be easiest to express what your intent is. And so, yeah, drawing tables in Word, if that's what works for you, you can use the same process that I've shown you and just take a screenshot and bring it into one of these apps and go from there. So we have 1 minute left. Yeah, I think if there's no more questions, we'll end at this point. I don't think any other questions are coming in, but feel free to contact me. You can go through an office, and I always enjoy helping startups with what they're trying to achieve. And then maybe in the future, if you have any prototyping or anything to share, I'd love to see it. Well, have a great day, everyone. It's been fun. Nafis, do you want to close off? Okay.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We actually have our second segment with Mona coming in. So I'm just going to stop the video for 30 seconds just so we can get Am wrapped up here. So just 30 seconds. Don't go anywhere. We got Mona coming up right up. Awesome. So we're back. Hopefully that session was really good with Am kind of going through the steps of prototyping. For our next segment with our founder perspective, we're actually very excited to bring back Mona, who is the CEO and founder of Loom Analytics. She is a Legal Innovation Zone alumni company. So she's coming back today to share her tips and her journey of prototyping and developing your minimum viable product. So Mona, please join me.
Okay, thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm Mona Dutt. I am the founder and CEO of Loom Analytics. So we're a data analytics company that's been around for 4.5 years. We've made our share of mistakes. We've learned from them. So we've learned a lot from them. So our first product was Cohort Analytics, and we put that out, I would say 4.5 years ago. And I have an engineering background, not a legal background. And as engineers, we often say, build it and they will come. That's what we did. We literally built it and hoped they would come. We did zero to very little market research. I built a full product out. A lot of money was spent. And when we put the product out, we discovered that the market wasn't ready for it. We discovered that the product wasn't, I wouldn't say wasn't designed to be usable, but the product was designed for lawyers who generally have not used data for decision-making in the past. And here we were putting out a product that was telling them how to run their cases, what they should be doing, when they're bringing matters in front of judges, all of these metrics that they had access to, but they'd never really thought about the law that way. To them, to lawyers, law is an art. So we hadn't stopped to think about, put ourselves in the minds of the lawyers, in the minds of our customers, to see how they perceived their day-to-day. We had never, ever sat down with a lawyer to see how they'd done legal research in the past. And really, Cohort Analytics sat smack dab in the middle of a legal research process. So 4.5 years later, we're still revisiting our user experience. We keep going back to it, trying to figure it out. But during all of this, when we put the product out, something good came out of it. We put the product out, and a completely different market segment came to us looking for the platform itself, not for the data that was sitting in Cohort Analytics. So Cohort Analytics, maybe I should just step back and say, Cohort Analytics is an online SaaS product that allows legal professionals, so whether it's people in the insurance industry, in the legal industry, be able to figure out what would happen in court. So I go to court, I'm going in front of Judge X. Am I going to, as a plaintiff or a defendant, what's going to happen? Am I going to win or lose this trial? If I'm bringing the matter in front of a certain judge or going up against certain opposing counsel, what can I expect to receive in damages? Essentially statistics from what's happened in the courts in the past. They're really in the Canadian space, we've got case law, and that's pretty much it. There's been little to no analytics. And so this product was supposed to be the answer in terms of data analytics. So the platform itself, the data presentation, the interaction, it was game changing in terms of the types of reports you could run. So we got demand from other industries saying, we love the platform itself. So we don't really care much for the data because it has no relevance to us, but can we get the platform? And this demand came from all segments. So we had requests from the automotive industry, from other manufacturing sectors, from regulators globally. So there was this demand for the platform itself. And when we decided to go back and revisit designing the platform by itself to be an independent entity, we then spun off a new product. So Cohort Analytics, while it's still alive, we now have a second product called Structura, but I promised myself I would not build it and wait for them to come. So Structura was done very differently. We announced the product in November of 2018, I think. Yeah, November of 2018, we announced the product that we'd never built. We truly had not a single line of code, but I announced it as if it existed because I needed to do market research. I needed to be able to figure out all of these features that I'm envisioning in a data analytics product. Are they things that people even want? So if I'd gone and asked people what they'd want in a data analytics platform, I probably would not get a straight answer. And it's because I wasn't really going out there to build a new copy of a different widget. I was going to build a product that really didn't exist. So it was a product that I couldn't really say, well, it's a better version of A or a better version of B. Mm-hmm. Here we were setting out to build a no-code analytics platform, truly start to finish, data management to reporting to all of that, but aimed at a 10-year-old. So the way I looked at it was, I'm just going to put out, an announcement, and we did that at the Liz, I think it was the industry night.
Yeah.
Put out an announcement, announce that the product is there, and see what happens. And then we waited. We talked to a lot of potential customers. We did that over, I would say 2018. We did that over 8 to 10 months. And we really only sat down to build the product in the last 4 months. So the heavy legwork and everything was done during market research. We got a lot of requests from clients for features and that we claimed existed. We'd say, okay, yeah, we'll have this to you. Why don't you send us your data? We'll have a prototype for you, or a proof of concept or a pilot up for you in 3 weeks. I'd get the developers to actually manually pull in the data using database import tools. I would get them to mock up the screens with real data. I'd put it in front of the clients and then ask the client if that's what they wanted. Once they committed to the revenue, then we'd go back and build the feature out. Mm-hmm. So everything I did wrong with Cohort Analytics, I was flipping it on its head. At least in my eyes now, it was completely wrong with Cohort Analytics. I was flipping it on its head. And with Structura, we did it very differently. We stopped and we said, how can we make sure that we're building a product that people will buy? It's not just want or think is cool. People will buy. Because when we put out Cohort Analytics, we got a lot of press. I mean, if you went and looked up Cohort Analytics, you'd find a lot of news articles about how great it is and all of that. But really, the proof is in the pudding. Are they willing to sign the checks? Mm-hmm. And so for us, until we were past the proof of concept stage and the client said, yes, I'm willing to put money down for a pilot, for Structura, no features built without that commitment.
So if I could jump in there, how did you approach that? How did you try to figure out which features are actually worth building? Because you went out and you spoke with many people.
Yeah.
So how did you kind of, like top 3 or 4 features that you should put your focus on right now?
So we actually, when we put the features out, we would do a count of the number of customers and the dollar value that those customers are going to bring in based on those features. To us, that was very, very important. Early days Structura's pricing was really, we start out at a certain tier and then we go with feature by feature. Okay, you want a baseline version of Structura, it's this. But now, so that I can put a dollar value to every single major feature, I've got a dollar value to it. So right. If you want, for example, we've got an integration with Structura, which allows you to do blockchain analytics. If you want that feature, you're going to have to pay X dollars for it. So unless a client says, I want that feature and I'm willing to commit a pilot, and then if the pilot goes well, I'm willing to commit for a year's revenue, that there's no dollar value for us associated with that feature. There's no return. So for me, I've gone as far as saying, tell the client that if they want, beyond the baseline, features that have to come with an analytic system, anything beyond the baseline, any new fancy feature or upsell has a dollar value add-on to it.
Mm-hmm. And how do you separate the baseline from the added feature?
So for me, when I was defining a Structura baseline, things that were important were the ability for clients to be able to bring all their data in, the ability for clients to be able to use the system with the readability level of a 10-year-old. So there were certain things that for me were they were like table stakes, right? So for me, those table stakes, we knew what they were. And so there was 4 or 5 clients in the early days that if they said they needed all those table stakes, they all got in. But beyond that, everything else is based on a dollar value. So if a client, and it's interesting because we leave it up to our clients to tell us what new features they want. So if a client comes in and asks for a certain feature, we will poll 5 or 6 other clients and say, okay, is this something you would be interested in? And unless we get a positive response, we don't build it. We also, with Structura, we've gone a bit differently. Cohort Analytics, because it was such a small market, it was Canada only. We had a sales team. With Structura, we're more channel-based. So we've got a large global sales channel who are not our internal sales team. So we rely on them. They're consultants that are in the market, going out there, who understand client problems in the different industries. So they actually come back, and when we talk to them about the different features of the product, they might come back and say, oh, what about X or what about Y? We had a call with a potential channel partner this morning, and they came back with a question around, they said, well, can we have, because Structura has the ability to automatically pull in data, almost like scrape data from different data sources online. Can we have an integration with Twitter and Yelp? And we'd never thought about that until now. So I'm now going to go out and possibly pull 3 or 4 other channel partners. And if we hear the same thing from others, we're going to end up building that integration. And it'll all depend on the volumes, right? It's the dollar value.
Right. So customer discovery, turn that into what kind of feature sets are your baseline features. So don't go feature crazy.
No. You can. Actually, that's what we did in November of 2018. That's exactly. So go feature crazy when you're talking about it, but don't go build everything.
Right.
Like, it's okay to go out there and allow a client to dream. A client might not even know what to dream about unless you put the bug in their head, right? They have to actually, they have to be willing to dream that big. And so for us, the logic really has been, allow the client to dream big and see what they are willing to pay for.
Right.
Because to me, the challenge was Cohort Analytics had so much, great feedback, but nobody was paying. Here, we've reversed it and said, you tell me what you want, you commit to the dollars, and I will build. So
drill your features and your focus based on where the money is coming from.
Where the money is coming from. I mean, we're all here to run business, right? We're not here, it's not research projects. At least to me, I'm not running a research project. I really need to understand where the money is going to come from. Otherwise, the company is not going to survive.
Right. And you talked about building manually and testing that out. Can you talk a bit about that?
So in our case, I like to say fake it till you make it, right? We literally, we had a test case where an automotive manufacturing client wants the ability to analyze their warranty claims and be able to really reduce their warranty claim payout. In that situation, I asked them for their data. It was sent to us in spreadsheet format. I handed it to the developers, and I told the client, I said, look, the import tool's there, but don't worry about it. When you need it automate, like when you need to bring in data in bulk, you can do it yourself. For now, as a service, we'll do it for you. Manually, the developers imported the data, figured out how to get it in, built the reports out, again, hard-coded the layout, and only when the client came back and said, yep, this is exactly what we want, did we go ahead and say, okay, now we can go and build the interface to import the documents automatically. Or even things like, the import tool, for example, it is designed to bring in any type of document, spreadsheet, CSV, XML, etc. It was made very, very basic in the beginning. As we got more complicated spreadsheets, that's when we built it up. That's when we built in all the checks and the balances and the edge cases to account for different types of spreadsheets, whether they're nested or not. We did not go in, even something as simple as a document import tool, we did not go in and build full feature to begin with. So even our features are being staged out, where we're only building it as we're hitting those edge cases. And yeah, that doesn't scale well. Like, so what if, a brand new client comes in tomorrow and sees that the feature doesn't exist? Well, you buy time. And in our case, we've been lucky. We've had that luxury because the platform we're building out, clients are willing to wait for it because it's giving them certain flexibility that they've never had in the past. But I think clients are generally understanding, as long as you can provide a deadline and commit to it and meet it. I think clients are generally understanding if you are clear and honest about the fact that here's our POC, and if you're willing, proof of concept, here's our proof of concept, and tell us what you think. And if you think it works for you, then we'll build it out.
Now, any tips on building that feedback loop between the product and the customer?
So I would suggest that your sales teams continually ask clients what they're looking for. In the beginning, it's probably you. Ask the clients what they're looking for. Actually sit down. That's another thing. Sit down and watch. Sometimes clients don't even know what they're looking for. All right. Because especially if you're building something that's, that isn't solving for a current problem, if you're building something that's creating a new market, then actually watch them work. Watch them work, see their challenges, build out something using, even if you have to, using Paint, using Envision, which is another mock-up tool out there. Our early mock-ups were using Paint, right? Very early days. And Paint is free on everybody's Windows laptop, okay? Use mock-up tools. Don't build the full product. Please, please, please. Don't make the same mistake we did with Cohort Analytics. Actually build out Squarespace, WordPress, email. If you've got a service that you're trying to turn into a SaaS product, use email if you have to, right? And you can say to clients, early clients that are acquaintances or in your personal network in the profession, you can say to them, yeah, we're testing out a process. To the other clients, by then, once you've tested out the first stage of the process, go fire up a WordPress site or Squarespace. They're super cheap. It is actually cheaper now than ever to be able to fire up an online business with forms and all of that. You can use Google Forms if you have to.
And no code, almost.
And no, it is no code. It is no code. Squarespace is truly no code. Yeah, if you want a little bit of flexibility, you move on to WordPress. But Squarespace is truly no code.
Right.
Right. Squarespace, you can even drag and drop to build a payment interface. So you can build a lot. Like, it's 2020 and there are so many no-code solutions out there.
So validate with a low fidelity proof of concept. Do it manually if you have to, but launch. See what the
launch.
stakes are.
Do not sit on the sidelines and build something in isolation, because I think the biggest issue is you need to see product market fit. You do not need a fully developed, quick to scale solution for product market fit. Product market fit is, can I get customers interested and willing to pay? And you can do that on the cheap.
So to summarize, because I want to get to Q&A after this, 3 quick tips that you would want to give to Mona several years back, or our folks here right now that are going through the same process. 3 quick tips in terms of prototyping and development.
Know your customer. Give yourself a budget for, know your customer, give yourself a budget for verifying product market fit, because otherwise you'll burn through a lot of money before, like, you just keep, you keep pushing the threshold for what you define as justifiable spend for getting product market fit. And the third is, do not get too attached to your product. I cannot say that enough. Do not get too attached to it. Yes, you need the passion and stuff, but you need to recognize at the end of the day, you have to be willing to walk away from it if you don't see product market fit during the parameters you've set. Those are 3 very important things.
Fall in love with the problem.
It's a really bad side effect for founders. We just have this issue.
Great. So let's open the floor up to questions. I see, Ian, you have a question. So how did you do your product pricing analysis prior to building?
So with Cohort Analytics, we got it really wrong. We priced too low when we went out into the market. With Structura, because it's, so there's 2 types of pricing, right? There's cost-based pricing, where you figure out what it is that it would cost the client or you to deliver the service, and then you add your margin of whatever you want it to be, usually done in the consulting space. And the other side is value-based pricing. With Structura, we're going with value-based pricing, and I continue to push the limits. So I started with...
So what is value-based?
Value-based pricing is based on the value you're delivering to the client. So with Structura, the way we did it was, it said no-code analytics platform, which allows you the luxury of not hiring data scientists and data analysts for the simple problems. And so I looked at it and said, if a company had to, and this is how I justify it to clients today, if a company had to solve the problem we're solving with Structura, they would have to hire a data scientist. Data scientists start at least 120 per year, if not higher, at least 120. And divide that by 12, and that's my monthly pricing. And literally that's how I've come up with it, because I have to be able to justify it to clients. And it's not like I've gotten it right. When we first started putting the product out in October, November, our early clients got the price of $3,000 per month. And then they got it. And then the next clients, I put out a slightly higher price. They didn't balk. And they got that price commitment for a year.
Right.
And now my goal is to see how far I can push it before I have clients pushing back and wanting to negotiate.
So pricing also comes with A/B testing.
It is A/B testing. And you figured out, because we are a geographically agnostic product, we also have to look at the appetite for the area of the world, right? So there are certain areas of the world that can handle the pricing that we're giving for North America. And there are other areas of the world that will say absolutely not. So depending on the regions and depending on the use cases, we have to vary it a little bit, but we're trying not to do that too much.
So a couple more minutes left. If you have any questions, just unmute your mic and reach out to us or hit us on the chat. I see, Jason, you have a question. So you're working on a project where the value proposition is also the money you would save on developers. What sort of evidence do people need to see before they're willing to sign on? How did you connect to their pain point?
So you tell them what you're able to do for them. And, because usually in our case, they'll come, we will be brought, a customer comes to us through a channel partner who says they have this problem and they need it solved, and Structura would solve it. And so when they come to us, we very clearly say, well, yeah, you don't need a data scientist or a data analyst to do this. This is how much we're going to charge. And when they ask why, we say, well, it's X% off of what it would be, and oh, by the way, it'll be done within minutes or hours instead of a data scientist sitting down and working a couple of years to do it. So that's how you do it. You do it based on the turnaround time. So if you're saving money on developers, that probably means you're not sitting and doing that work manually and them having to wait on it, right? So the turnaround time and possibly providing a clear value prop that says it's a percentage discount off of what it would cost for a developer. And the recruitment and the hiring hassles of bringing a developer on.
Any other questions? So it seems like there aren't any other questions. So with that, Mona, I'd like to thank you so much.
Thanks.
Any parting words to our friends online?
Just do not overspend during your product market fit stage. But other than that, good luck, guys.
Awesome. Mona, thank you so much.
Thanks.
It's always a pleasure having you on. Yeah. So today we went through a very detailed kind of version of looking through how we can build our prototypes, low fidelity, somewhat higher fidelity. I hope you learned quite a bit. For this week's portion of homework, we're asking you to build out a wireframe and start building out these low-level mockups. We will be sharing these slides with you online, and tomorrow you could find our update email with more additional resources and our slides uploaded online. In the meantime, we are available on Slack if you need us. And obviously, This week and next week's session, as I had mentioned earlier, is going to be quite important because we want you to start building out these prototypes, start building out a pitch deck in order to bring some of these other sessions together as we've learned so far. So that's it for today. Thank you all so much for joining, and we will see you all very soon. Cheers. All right, so now that we've gone through Am's session and have heard from Mona, I wanted to share next week's task with you all. So what we're asking you to do is essentially build out a feature list of your minimum viable product or minimum viable design, let's say. So as you may remember, Am talked about, try to have a minimum feature set, so maybe 3 to 4. So really think about your core product, the first version of your prototype. What would be those 3 to 4 things that are absolutely required for your prototype to function, where you could show it to someone and they can, kind of click around with it, give you some feedback, and let you know how feasible or usable it is. Moving on from that, we actually want you to start building out that wireframe. So whether you're sketching it out by using pen and paper, or you're actually using one of the apps like Envision app or Marvel app, we actually want you to start building out that wireframe and taking it to the next step in terms of building a visual mock-up. So I actually want to be able to kind of have a visual version or presentation of what this mock-up might look like. So again, go back and I would use maybe Paint or Envision app, Marvel app, whatever you're comfortable with, but some way of visualizing this prototype that you're coming up with. So that's what we're asking you to do for the next week. If you have any questions for us, we're obviously available on Slack. We'll be sharing all the resources. So keep an eye out for the email coming out tomorrow morning.